Okay, thank you. I'm Ann Martin, and it's my pleasure today to talk about Financial Literacy Month. April is Financial Literacy Month. It has been designated that since 2003 by the United States. A lack of financial preparedness and financial information has huge societal costs, and in the coming years that will really tell on Americans and especially women. That's why it's a complex problem. It's been said that over 50% of Americans do not have $1,000 in savings, and it's also been found that they cannot cover a $400 emergency. So, as we all can see, again, especially for women who have not been in the workforce to accumulate a retirement plan, who are now found themselves without a partner or without a husband, it can be very, very difficult. And at the other end of the spectrum, the Federal Reserve has found that student loan borrowers in the U.S. collectively owe over $1.5 trillion. Let's let that sink in for a moment. Over $1.5 trillion. And in a recent study, the University of Illinois found that nearly half of emerging adults participating in the study were financially precarious. 32% were what was termed financially precarious, and 36% were found financially at risk. So, it's very important that we designate one month as financial literacy, and of course that involves education. Education at the beginning of a young woman entering the workforce. So today we are going to focus on both sides of the spectrum. We're going to talk about young women coming out of college and perhaps negotiating their first salary. But first, I'd like to introduce you to Dr. Laurel Beaton, who recently retired from the Government Accountability Office, and I'll introduce our second speaker as she comes up. Dr. Beaton was a senior analyst in the Education, Workforce, and Income Security Division of the Government Accountability Office, and right now she's volunteering at Wiser as a senior research fellow and lending her years of experience. I see you shaking your head. Yes, Wiser. Many of us are familiar with the work that the tremendous work that they do.
Yes, they do.
At GAO, the Government Accountability Office, her studies were on the provision of home and community-based services and how the Social Security Administration delivers information to its constituents. And of course, at least half of those constituents are women. She was a senior fellow at the National Academy of Social Insurance, where she led the Washington Internship Program. She was a senior research fellow at Wiser and senior policy advisor at the Public Policy Institute. In addition, further back in her experience,
My mother paid her.
She had the very interesting, I find, very interesting job of being a staff member of the American Indian Policy Committee for Senator James Aberesk. Long time since I've heard that name.
Yes,
Senator
it was a long time
Aberesk.
ago. Yeah.
She was a faculty member at George Washington University, and currently she's a member of the Alumni Advisory Board at Virginia Tech University, where she received her doctorate. So it's my pleasure to welcome to the Clearinghouse on Women's Issues, Dr. Laurel Beaton.
Thank you. I was born in the first year of the baby boom, and the baby boom, there's a whole bunch of us, and I had 41 10th graders in a classroom. I always say, I hear people saying, I have 25 kids in a classroom. I say, oh really? Somehow I just can't work up a lot of sympathy. So I'm a mover when I talk. So I am going to talk about, I was prepared to talk about the span, both young women and older women. I will do that. I see there aren't as many young women in the room, but what I'm going to ask you to do as I present is write this down and tell your daughters, your granddaughters, the young women that you know, pass this on. They're not getting it in high school or in college. Even the economics majors are not getting it because that's not what you do. You know the big new science, behavioral economics, Rich Thaler just received the Nobel Prize for it. Basically what behavioral economics says is we have all of these academic economic theories. This is the way it should be. And Thaler says, if this is the way it should be, why isn't it that way? Why don't people make decisions that are positive for them? So, write it down. Don't write it down. Remember it. And tell other women. Right now, there are 5.5 million more women than men in the U.S. at age 65. And that number gets, or the portion gets bigger the older we get, more women than men. 67% of the 85 plus population is women. And we are the most likely group to end up living in poverty. Now I just press enter, right?
I don't know. Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
Sorry. The other keyboard over there.
Oh, thank you. Ta-da. Issues unique to women. We earn less. We know that from last month. We take time away from work. We care for children. We care for our parents. We care for our spouses. We care for our spouses' parents. We work part-time. Sometimes when we're taking time away from work, sometimes when that's the only job we can get, and that means a lot of times we may not qualify for pensions or life insurance or health insurance. It also means we have less in savings and less or no pensions. We end up living alone in retirement and we live longer. Yikes. The financial risks of longevity. Inflation. Now, inflation has been at about, 2 point something recently, but if you all will recall back in Jimmy Carter's day, we had very high inflation. If you're living on a fixed income, that eats away at what you have in your fixed check. By the way, remember this and write it down. Social Security is the only pension that you get that is cost of living adjusted every year tied to the consumer price index. In other words, the benefit that you start out with keeps even with inflation. Nobody else does that. Some of the defined benefit pension plans will give you a 3% cost of living adjustment if inflation is 3%, but generally those pensions are capped at 3%, so if inflation is higher, too bad. Outliving your assets. An awful lot of us, even if we have saved, nursing homes, $7,000 to $10,000 a month, that's a lot. Death of a spouse. That will reduce your income, most likely, because even if you have a joint and survivor benefit, that is less than the two benefits combined. Unexpected health costs. I always say at a certain age, little bits and pieces of us start to drop off. I've already had one knee worked on, not replaced, just worked on, just dusted and cleaned in there, you know. And I'm not quite ready for the replacement, but good friend of mine that I hike with, she's having her hip replaced. Another friend of mine at Mathematica fell last summer and broke both legs. I want you to know, she was like this for 8 weeks, and the Old Girl Network kicked in and took care of her, but we are still in our late 60s and early 70s. That gets harder to do, but the cost of that, let me tell you, and she's insured, she's got great insurance, and it still costs for some extra care to come in, some extra help, what she needed done in her home to make it accessible. Poverty, the next step. And by the way, will somebody please yell if I only have 5 minutes? Tips for financial planning. This is for the younger people, but still even for those of us who are retired or looking at retirement, set your long-term goals early. You may want to buy a home, say for child's education, retirement income, but additionally, if you are older, where are you going to live? Are you going to continue living where you are now? Can you set a long-term goal? Make a financial plan. And again, this does not end with retirement. This is something, ensure your life saving will get you to your savings goal and last you through your lifetime, and review annually. And if you are married or have a partner, sit down annually with that person and say, what have we got? What happens if something happens to one of the two of us? Keep planning. Identify your sources of income. What are you getting paid? What is the interest earned on whatever it is you have invested? The bank of mom and dad. I hear more young people say, well, when my parents die, I'm going to inherit all this money. Well, you know what? I'm going to cost a whole lot, and there just might not be a whole lot of money left in the bank of mom and dad. It's absolutely wonderful, but this is something I advise, be careful. And if you are the mom and dad, remember it's lovely to pay for your kids' college loans or your kids' college tuitions at these fancy colleges like I went to, but it's going to cost you when you're retired, and you can't get a job when you're 85. Your son or daughter or grandchild can probably get a job at 23 or 24. So please don't pull out of your retirement saving unless you are a multimillionaire, and if you are, I'm here for adoption. Okay? College pension plans and Social Security, be actively involved in your finances. Okay? If you're looking for a job, I'm setting you up here. Look for a job with benefits, if you can. Now, sometimes, and we've all done it, had to say, oh boy, I'm in trouble, this job is here, it doesn't have benefits, but you know what? It's better to have a job than no job, and I can look for a better job from this job. But look for that. If your job does not provide benefits, provide your own. We're going to talk about IRAs in a minute. Study your investment options for retirement savings. IRAs, you could do on your own. 401k style plans, of course, you get from your employer. Here's another big one, and this is happening so much today. We're also seeing with mortgage debt is credit card debt. People forget that you do have to pay for that. You know, the ATM is not a bank account. It's a loan, ladies and gentlemen, and if you don't pay, then you have to pay interest on it. So watch out for the high interest credit cards. Okay, sources of retirement income, and I'm going to whip through these. Obviously, Social Security, pensions, savings and investments, and earnings from work. What those of us in the area call the poor woman's pension, work. And a whole lot of older people are having to work a whole lot longer than they thought. What is Social Security? It is the base of your retirement income. because it is there and is cost of living adjusted. It sits there. It was never intended to be everything, though. Social Security benefits are for your life, and you also disability, spousal, and family benefits. If you have dependent parents and you are getting a Social Security benefit, your parents can get a benefit. Here's the Consumer Price Index. It was 2.8 in 2019. About 175 million of us pay into it. About 62 million collect monthly benefits, and about 1 in 4 families collects. Because remember, if you have, my best friend's spouse died at age 50. She had 4 boys. 2 of them were over 16, so they didn't get benefits. But 2 of them did qualify for benefits. They used to be called in her care benefits.
Right.
The child of the worker. What that did, she was a nurse, and she had worked part-time all the way through their childhoods. But when he died with 2 mortgages and that she didn't know about, she needed to go back to work. But she was an educator. She hadn't been an on-the-ground floor nurse, and she needed to go back to school and recertify, and those Social Security benefits, those inner care benefits, allowed her to go back to work to care for those kids. So, and she's still my best friend. We've known each other since before we went to school. Grade school, high school, college. In high school we doubled the prom. We went to college together. We were in each other's weddings, and we still, she's wonderful. So, what do I need to know? How my benefits are calculated. This is important. Just have a general idea, and I'll talk about that if we have time. Your full retirement age. The younger you are, the closer you are to a full retirement age of 67. Mine is 66, is a 10-year baby boom lump, and 65 is the used to be. There ain't no 65 retirements anymore. Then you need to know how, when you actually take your benefits, how does that affect your benefit amount? Can I work and take a Social Security benefit, and are my benefits taxed? Okay? When you claim is extremely important. A lot of people say, I'm going to take my Social Security benefits at age 62. You can certainly do that, but understand that your benefits are going to be permanently reduced if you take it a bit. It's about 70% of what it would be at full retirement age. Now, if you do the crafty thing, and you can, stay for each year over your full retirement age, you get an 8% increase in your Social Security benefit until you reach age 70, and then it's over. But once you reach age 70, there are no delayed retirement credits. But I know an awful lot of people say, well, I'm going to take my Social Security early, and then I'll let my investments build on them. Well, if you're planning on doing that, I want to know what line you're going to stand in to get an 8% rate of return that consistently. Just by tossing that out there for you. The other thing that is very important is if you need your benefits early. If you're really hurting and you need it, take them. You paid. You paid in. You are entitled to benefits. The easiest way to get an estimate of your Social Security benefit is to go to the Social Security Administration retirement plan, or you can go online and they will give you an estimate. It's incredibly secure. You have to go through all kinds of jumps and hoops and all kinds of back bends, but that means it's super secure. And they will tell you, based on what you've earned so far. If you're going to go on and make $1 million, that will probably change what that benefit amount is going to be. But close enough. It will give you a feel for what you would get at 62, what you would get at full retirement age, what you would get at 70, what you would get if you became disabled, and what your spouse would get. Okay? So I recommend that, young and old. All right, we said pensions and retirement income. I've set it up so this is things you need to ask your employer, things you need to ask yourself, and things you need to ask your spouse. You need to ask your employer, do you offer a pension plan? Am I eligible? How long does it take for me to earn a pension? In other words, some plans, you have to be in that place of employment for at least 1 year. Sometimes they will make it retrospective after a year, but if you say, this is the worst thing, I didn't understand what it was, and you leave, too bad. So, understand it. Is there a tax-deferred savings plan such as a 401k or a 403b? If they don't have a defined benefit plan, is there a savings plan that I can participate in? And do you match? Because if your employer matches, if they match, it's generally up to 5%, a lot of times from 3% to 5%, it's half of that, but it's always free money. Don't say you can't afford to do that. Do it. Even if it kills you, you will be glad you did. And what will be the present day value of my pension if I change jobs? How much is in the lump, and can I take it with me? Now, I'm going through this stuff very, very quickly, and there are all kinds of nuances to these things, but we don't have time, so I'll come back another time and get into this. I love this stuff. It's really important. Okay, what you need to ask yourself: what is the expected value of my investments at retirement? An awful lot of people think $50,000 is a lot of money, which it is, but that it's going to carry them through retirement, which it isn't. Will that be enough? How will I manage payouts from my employee savings plan? In other words, if I leave my job, you can leave your 401k with your employer if it's over a certain amount, or you can take it with you and roll it into an IRA. You have to do that within 60 days, though. You have to be very, very careful about that, because if you don't, the IRS considers that income, and they say, you just took money out and you owe us money now. So, how will I manage the payouts? How will I protect my assets at retirement? Am I going to do various kinds of insurance or long-term care insurance? Am I going to purchase a lifetime income product such as an annuity? How am I going to have my money pay out? And by the way, if you're interested, I don't get into this, but a lot of times financial planners are recommended, and I think that is, I have one. But I recommend you go to the Wiser website and look at how to choose a financial planner, because some people are out there saying, give me your money and I'll happily take it from you, and others are saying, let us help you. So do take a look at that. What to ask your spouse: have you earned a pension? Do you know how much that pension will be upon retirement? Again, there are going to be two of you at least. And while you're working, the interest on that investment in the Roth IRA continues to grow. It's, depending on how you feel about that, it's not a bad deal. This miracle of compound interest, we don't have time, but you know that. It's a good thing. So, financial do's and don'ts for the 20s and age 20 and 30. Check out the job benefits, get in the habit of savings, start retirement savings, strive for debt-free life. 30s, keep saving and start focusing on investing, keep your debt in control, and do an insurance checkup. 40s, set a specific savings goal, look at how you're investing, ask for professional help, do an insurance checkup. 50s, revisit your savings goal, take advantage of higher contribution levels. You can do catch-ups when you reach age 50 in your 401k style plans, and do an insurance, are you insured enough? 60s, consider what your retirement spend down strategy is going to be. Compare your pension payout. Are you going to take all that money in a lump and invest it yourself? Or might you purchase an annuity and let Prudential or MetLife or whoever the big insurance companies that sell annuities do it for you? We have a big, Wiser has a booklet on annuities. I recommend it. It's very straightforward discussion of the pros and cons of annuities. Consider your health, consider your options if you can't afford to retire. Can you back down a little? In your 70s, start withdrawals from your traditional IRA by 70 and a half. You can start at 59 and a half. At 70 and a half, you have to start Social Security benefits if you haven't already. And this is one we use all the time. It's, they're with their financial advisor, and he says, ta-da, your magic retirement number is 328. And he says, $328, that's not bad. I think we can save $328. And she says, do you mean save $328 a year or $328 a month? He says, I mean work 328 more years before you think about retiring. And that's unfortunately terribly true. Now, as I said, I do this all the time. There's time I can talk with you about caregiving. Just broad span. Caregiving really clobbers women. We do it, it's very important. But please, if you are a caregiver, there are two, and I've just done two fact sheets that should go up shortly on this. One, what you need to know about the person you are taking care of, their finances. If you're taking care of, I cut you off because you're too close to me. I'm sorry, I haven't been looking you in the eye. So find out what they have, where it is, how to deal with it. The other one is you. So many women leave their jobs. Can you afford to do that at age 50? You're giving up not just your job and your income, you're probably giving up your health insurance. Are there things that you can do, that you can negotiate with your employer about maybe how many hours do I need to keep to be able to pay into the health insurance and maintain that? So these things are very important. I can talk more about this at another time. My fee is very, very high. You get what you pay for. I thank you for having me come. I love this stuff, so thank you.
So many of us. Actually, Dr. Baden did a good job of transitioning to our next speaker when she mentioned that women earn less during a lifetime and they live longer, which sets women up for very much less in retirement. One thing that we so often, young women, young men and young women, but we're focused on young women, don't focus on is starting early. For example, a young woman would need to save close to $1,000 a month to remain in the middle class when she retires. $925 a month for 30 years at 8% grows to $1.26 million. But if you live a long life and you have caregiving responsibilities or you need care for yourself, that may not be very much at all. That can be a drop in the bucket. Young women are often surprised to find that the few $100s, just as we saw in the Kathy comic strip here, that a few $100s they're saving each month may not keep them in a middle class lifestyle when they retire. And that is so important to think about when you're young and just starting. And that's our next topic for young women just beginning in the workforce. Our next speaker is from the American Association of University Women, and they have set up a salary negotiation program. Young women, if you don't negotiate a comparable salary when you enter the workforce, you are every year or at every performance review, you are a little behind your male counterpart. So a critical program when this was set up. Our speaker, Abigail Sarah Lewis, is the Vice President of Programs at AAUW, and she oversees this program. She also oversees the leadership and campus initiatives and the science and technology, engineering, and math efforts. Prior to AAUW, she was at Barnard College for 6 years. She was an Associate Dean of Pre-Professional Advising. She's worked and taught at Rutgers, at New York University, and at the CUNY Graduate Center. Her PhD is in history from Rutgers, but she has a certificate in women and gender studies, so that set her up very well to come to AAUW. Her bachelor's degree is from Columbia and her master's is from UCLA, both in African American studies. So now we're going to talk about young women and money.
Thank you.
Welcome.
And I wanted to first off start saying that AUW, we are an organization that is committed to advancing women through advocacy, education, and research. And our three main focus areas are education and training. So, fun fact, we are the largest funder of women's graduate and professional education in this country, next to Department of Education. Almost $4 million given a year to women in their education. But also leadership and economic security. And today I'll be focusing on economic security. We do this through the focus we look in economic security is the gender pay gap is our big issue, but we're also very concerned about retirement issues, how that affects women really from kind of cradle to grave. And we're, let's say frustrated is a mild word to say that the pay gap has not budged about more than a nickel in the last 20 years. So our CEO said she's had enough, and we've decided that we're just going to close the pay gap by 2030. So easy peasy, gonna get it done. But in order to do that, we have to take a multi-pronged approach, which includes our great advocacy work that we do on the Hill around things like the Paycheck Fairness Act, and also supporting the ERA. We also work with employers to bring in best practices, and then we also do a salary negotiation workshop, which is called our Work Smart program. And for that, our goal is to train 10 million women in salary negotiation and also how to research a fair and equitable salary over the next 5 years. So we're going to need everyone's help. 10 million, we can do that tomorrow, I'm sure, especially with all this brain power in the room. So let me get started. It's over here.
You can move the keyboard too, however you want.
That's all good. Thank you. So the gender pay gap affects your career and lifetime earnings. This is the main reason why we teach women salary negotiation. Nationally, women are paid just 80 cents for every dollar men are paid, and that's among people who work full time. The gender pay gap exists in every line of work and at every education level and at various ages. Now, the number we just did Equal Pay Day, right, which was April 2nd, that's really the number of all women, the average all women. So when you're looking across race and industry, all women against a white man would make, right? Now we have other equal pay days throughout the year because we know that once you start factoring in things like the racial pay gap, that differs, right? So for instance, Asian American women had their equal pay day back in March. White women just had it recently. We have black women will have their equal pay day in August. Native American women will have theirs in October, and Latina women will have their equal pay day in November, right? What that means is it's going to take a calendar year plus all those extra months to make up what an average white man would make in that first year. That's how America deals with it. In Great Britain and parts of the EU, they do it differently. So they tell women to put on an out-of-office message on their email or on their phones starting in the fall to say, well, I don't have to work for the rest of the year because you're not going to pay me my full amount. I also like that idea too, but I live here, so we'll say we do it past the calendar year. Yeah. So as I mentioned, women of color are disproportionately affected by the pay gap. So we look at the numbers from 2017. If we're looking at the different numbers, you can see the differences. Once again, Hispanic, Latino women are making just over 50% on the dollar, and that number really hasn't budged. This is the number, the low 50s. Actually, if you go into the early 60s, that's kind of the average of what all women made. So you can see that other women, different races have progressed, not that far, but for Latino women, it's pretty much stayed stagnant over the last 50 years. Now, these lost wages for women and their families means that they're less able to support themselves, save and invest in the future. Families, businesses, and economics and the economy suffer as a result, right? So if you're looking over a 40-year career, white women lose about a little over $400,000, right? But you're looking, once again, Latinos losing over $1 million over a 40-year career, once again. And what does that mean, right? So in the here and now, what we're talking about are things like student loan debt, right? Anne mentioned the amount of debt that is now owed. So we have, Americans have almost $1.46 trillion in outstanding student loan debt. Now, women who make about 58% of all college graduates, women actually hold 64% of this debt, right? Nearly $929 billion. And the problem is that as soon as a woman gets out of college, she graduates to a gender pay gap, right? And we know that even when you're controlling for all factors, at minimum you're looking at a 7% pay gap, right? But on average it's more about 18%. And every year it gets wider and wider and wider, right? So if you don't have you're not making enough money, imagine how long it takes to actually pay back your student loans. And it also means as it takes longer to pay them back, their interest accrues at a faster rate than men's. We also find that women of color tend to have an even harder time paying off their loans than white men and women. In AEW's analysis of Department of Education data, we found that in 3 years of repayment, Black women and Latinas had paid down 12% and 18% of their loan debt, respectively, compared to white men at 42% and white women at 33%. Our analysis also found that a third of all women repaying their loans experienced trouble covering other essential expenses. Black women at 57% and Latinas at 42% in repayment had even more trouble meeting their financial obligations. And when you think about that so early on, right, it also tells you choices you can make around your career, right? It tells you your flexibility, where you can live, right? The options that you have in terms of, taking that leap, right, and taking that dream job that might not pay as much, right? And also, there are other financial obligations, right? We think that it's just simply, just student loan debt, but you think of all the other things you pay early on, and I think also with what we just seen, the earlier you can get that money in, also in a retirement fund or in any kind of, savings account, the compound interest, right? And so looking at women who are unable to actually put a strong foundation down for the rest of their lives. Another thing, what does it mean? Childcare expenses. There's a motherhood penalty. When women have children, they find that it's seen as a value negative, and it hurts their pay, right? They're seen as they're not as being committed to their jobs. And so not only are you taking maybe time off from work, and so you're not putting that money into Social Security during that time or into retirement at that time, but when you go back into the workforce, you're going to get paid less. There's a fatherhood bonus, right? Now, what's interesting, recent research shows is that penalty and that bonus disappear for single mothers and single fathers. So a single mother loses the motherhood penalty because it's seen as, because they're working and having children, they're very committed to their jobs. Single fathers, on the other hand, because they have a child and they're working, are seen as too committed to their children. And so it actually becomes less of a bonus for men. So, but if you are in a two-parent household, it hurts the woman and it's a positive for the men. So the childcare expenses, also the fact that once again, the choices have to get made concerning how expensive childcare is. You're getting paid less. So you want to go back to work, but does it make sense for your family when you add up all the costs for nursery, for preschool, what have you, and then the decision can be made, does it make sense for one person to stay at home? Since the woman is most likely to be getting paid less for her job anyway, then she might stay out of work, right? You see this kind of vicious cycle happening where women are then opting out because it costs too much money for the child care, and then when they try to get back into the workforce, they've lost years of strong financial foundation, but they also are going in at that penalty as well, and they're making less, right? Owning a home, right? It's another piece that we're trying to save up for. This comes back to wealth, and we know there's a large disparity when it comes to gender wealth gap and the racial wealth gap as well. We know that single women have a third of the wealth of a single man has right now. Median single black woman and the median single Latina have $200 and $100 in wealth, respectively, compared to a median white woman's wealth of over $15,000. Right? So once again, all these things contribute, and what does this mean in terms of being what they call the productive citizen, right? Can you actually own a home, right? Or when you think about owning a home or saving for your child's education, right? And then of course retirement, which we've already covered, so I'm not going to go into too much depth there. But this is what it means for the here and now. This is what is being affected. But what do we know? We know women are actually really good negotiators, right? And this isn't to say that salary negotiation is going to be the panacea to do everything, but we know that women feel less confident going to a salary negotiation, right? And that is where our work comes in. But there are barriers that get in the way for women when they want to negotiate for ourselves, right? To be an advocate for yourself. So this is what we teach in our Work Smart workshops. There are some of the common fears and barriers. People are worried that if you go into a job negotiation, your offer is going to be rescinded. This is what we hear when we ask our participants, right? We tell them that's not going to happen, right? No one says, I'm sorry, did you just ask for more money? No job for you, right? I think we've all probably been hiring managers. We know that no one wants to go back and do a job search all over again. You're going to be labeled as pushy or difficult. That's another concern, right? We think of women who advocate for themselves as being too aggressive. Or that you're not a team player, right? You think that you're already getting off on the wrong foot before you even go in to your job. Now, we also know that sexism and discrimination play a role in why women are not paid an equal and just salary, right? So we don't think it's just because women are not negotiating for fair and equitable salary, because we know that sexism and discrimination exists. We also know that there's pay disparities in women-dominated fields. We know that when jobs are female-dominated, that they are just paid less, right? We don't value them as much. We're talking about nursing, we're talking about teaching, we're talking about social work, right? We're talking about administrative work. And then there are the gender stereotypes that also exist. Once again, going to that back idea of being pushy and difficult. And then we have the expectation of women as caregivers, right? I mean, now it's illegal. You can't ask a woman if she's going to plan to have children or not. But I still get, asked, or people try to figure out what your family situation is, and it's totally illegal. And they're like, so what other obligations do you have? I have an obligation to a fair and equitable salary, is what I have. So the other part is the double bind, which I'm sure most of you have heard of. But as you know, the double bind is about the roles that women are allowed to play in society. And women get conflicting demands around behavioral expectations. Basically, the double bind is that women feel, and this is true, you can either be seen as competent or as liked. But you can't be seen as both, right? And there are plenty of studies that show the more competent a woman shows herself to be, the less likable she is seen to be. And the more liked she is, the less confident she is seen. And I think that's true. People will say, you're so nice and you're also smart. Like, how did that happen, right? Like, we can't imagine that at all. And we find that when women step outside of those expectations, they're seen as difficult and unlikable, right? And so this is really tough. When you go into a salary negotiation, what are you trying to do? You're trying to prove that you're likable and competent, right? So how do you handle that? So with that, we have our course that we teach, Work Smart, which we do in person. We also have them on college campuses and online, which I'm going to go over now what we actually teach, so you have an idea of how we work on this. So the 4 steps we teach: how to know your value, how to know your target salary and benefits, you got to know your strategy, and then how to practice, right? And we think through these 4 steps, women will be in a much better place in terms of negotiating for a fair and equitable salary. So the first step we do is to talk about, the first step, to negotiate one's value. So what we work with everyone in the room is, how do you confidently share the value you bring to your position in a way that will resonate with your employer? I mean, it's strategic, right? But the idea is to, how do you get that arsenal together? So what we do teach, and we also, how do you become your best advocate? So what we teach is document your activities, right? We tell women to keep a journal of all your accomplishments, or even nowadays with technology, an email folder, right? You can just kind of file away. Think beyond the tasks, right? So to think about the big picture, and also to think about your goals and what are you doing to achieve those goals, and how you can resonate that with your employer. Bring data to the conversation. We find often women get worried about bragging. They think it's bragging. I say it's not bragging if it's a fact, right? You're just stating the truth. And everything counts, right? So we do know that women are sometimes they do an emotional labor at work that we can't quantify, but you need to bring that also to the table. The second step is to know your target salary and benefits. I think this is really the best part that we teach, right? I mean, I think it's great that we teach negotiation. I think it's great that we teach women how to advocate for themselves. But this is where we really differentiate with a lot of other programs out there that are working for women to get a fair and equitable salary. Because here's what I would say as we go into this. If you're underpaid, you can learn to negotiate for extra money, and you can get extra money, but you still might be underpaid, right? So before you go into a job, the key thing is to first research the salary range and benefits as much as you can. We teach our participants how to do that through different websites, and the key is to really go to objective market-based research. There are a lot of places now that it's anecdotal, so this is how much I make here, but there's no study. So there are a few places like payscale.com and salary.com that get employer data, and so that's going to be more realistic in terms of what you're going to get for your salary. And then you teach them how to establish a target salary range, which is really important. And then from there, assess what benefits are important to you. You mentioned benefits. Benefits are key, right? And sometimes the benefits are more important. Having a fully funded healthcare, right, is going to be much more important than maybe a couple of $1,000s extra. Maybe having that flex time is going to be more important to have you. And then how to determine your walk-away point. Without this, we're not going to actually close the gender pay gap, right? Once again, you can get extra money, but if you're not getting a fair and equitable salary, we're not closing the gender pay gap. So it's really important that we arm ourselves with this information, and you should tell your friends, colleagues, daughters, nieces, sisters, what have you. This is really the most important piece, is to learn how to do that fair and equitable salary. Because we also know so many women think, my first job out, and they think that their salary history dictates what their salaries will be for the rest of their lives. That's not true. You're going to be going to different jobs at different levels, and it doesn't say, well, I guess if I get this raise, it's just $5,000 more, right? That you have no idea. Really do the research and figure it out so you can get that fair and equitable salary. From there, we go from looking at being the fact-based to knowing your strategy and how to become more highly persuasive. Now, our work is to look at both people who are negotiating for that new job, but also raises and promotions as well. So we try to cover it for all. We teach things like salary deflection, which I think is really, really important. People don't know what to do. They go into a job interview and someone says, well, how much would you like to make? What do you say to that, right? You want to deflect. This is part of the negotiation dance, right? And so we give our participants ways they can learn how to deflect, right? Sometimes it's just a script. It's knowing that I can just say, I need to know I need to know more about this job before I can take this offer, right? Or I'm just looking to see if this is the right fit. Or how much have you budgeted? Because we all know it's not like they think of a number on the fly, right? They know exactly how much they're going to pay, right? And there's nothing wrong with asking them. Tell them before you go in, these are the important things to remember. It's okay to have your notes. Do you go in there? You don't want to get personal. You don't want to say, but I have student loan debt, so I need this money, right? You want to stick to the data. And I'll tell you what the data is. The data is that you're awesome, and you're going to tell them how you're awesome. And the other important data is to say, according to my research, this job should pay me this, right? Those are the only important things you need to know. Then after that, you always have to make sure you get in writing. Stuck in something, it takes about an hour or more to take this course, but you can stop and start whenever you want to. But I want to say, have in-person. We have fantastic initiatives around this country. We do have a partnership with the mayor of DC, and so we do have an in-person workshop on May 24th, and so you can always go. Actually, if you go through the online link, you're going to get to the AEW website if you want to look at our in-person course. But we have a really fantastic partnership with the mayor of Boston, for instance, where we're trying to train half women in Boston in salary negotiation. But we're also with the state treasurers in Massachusetts. We've pledged with the Women's Foundation of Kansas, Missouri to train 1 million women across both those states. We're working with the Friends Commission of Women in San Francisco. We have initiatives in Long Beach, California, and Tempe, Arizona. We are in constant conversation with different associations and organizations, and so we're just trying to get the word out. Work Smart Online is free. Let me say that again, it's free. We're trying to teach you salary negotiation for free. Our in-person workshops, free. You can go to our in-person workshops for free. We think it's just the most important thing is that we close the gender pay gap, because we know that by closing the gender pay gap, we are transforming lives. We are transforming women's lives. We're transforming their lives for their families. We're going to transform the economy. Can you imagine all that extra money going back in to the tax, right? Think of all the money in terms of buying a house, furthering one's education, right? When we think about caregiving, what's the money there if you're going to be taking care of your parents or your spouse's parents, you mentioned, right? All that money would be there if women could just make a fair and equitable salary. So go to aew.us/CWI, and we hope to see you online soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just have one question. Could you tell us what's up with eliminating salary history and job negotiations?
So every state, their states and cities have been doing that. So we know that, for instance, in Massachusetts, they just passed a law there. Some places like Michigan, there's been executive orders, and so we found that some governors are doing it just in terms of if you're going to take a public job, a state or city job, or some mayors have also done that. Others are trying to pass that statewide, so you can also go to AEW's website and you can track where that is in each state. I will tell you that we were just delivering an in-person workshop at a state I will not name, but it was being put on in partnership with the governor's office there, and they had staff there, and we said, oh, in this state it's actually legal. They passed a law last year, you can't ask for salary history, and one of the participants raised her hand and said, I just interviewed for a position last week at state, and within the state, and they asked me my salary history, and of course the governor's staff was like, ah! But so it's educating yourself. So that's also part of what we do when we do our workshops. We tell people to know what the local laws or the state laws are. So if someone does ask you and it's illegal, you can say, you can't actually ask me that question.
And the Paycheck Fairness Act?
Well, we know that the House has passed it, and it's before the Senate. So that's what we know.
Oh my.
If it's passed by both houses and not totally vetoed, will it cover private, public? How broad is the?
It's pretty broad. I would say I'm a programs person, not a policy person, so I don't want to say anything that would be incorrect on that. But I do know that all that information is online at AEW. I know the ins and outs of salary negotiation, but I do know the Paycheck Fairness Act is very much needed, and it will help us kind of on our road to eliminating the gender pay gap.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
Let's, I'm sure there are other questions.
Give them a hand for
Yes,
that really good presentation. Thank you.
It had you years ago.
Yeah.
10.5 years, that's the goal for closing the
Yes.
gender pay gap.
Done.
And training 10 million over 5 years, that is wonderful. So, as she said, tell all the young, particularly all the young women that we know. So now the floor is open for questions for either Dr. Lewis or Dr. Beaton.
Oh, I
Holly?
just wanted to share something. Did you hear in Montgomery County, one of the new council members got to hire a new staff member? Stop me if you heard. And so she was immediately asked what her back pay was. And it just made him totally aware of, the unfairness. He immediately got the Montgomery County council to pass it for a paycheck. Isn't that interesting? I mean, I don't know that
That's
people
encouraging.
know that as well.
I
as they
think,
should.
was there questions?
I have a question.
Okay, Jeanette?
Does the AUW provide resources for doing that important research? It's salary, what is the going salary is a good question, but I think young women might be.
Where to find information
Exactly.
so that you can establish your.
Yeah, so we do recommend two different sites, payscale.com and salary.com. Those have employer data, and so that is
it's more kind of market based and objective than it is, so there are other sites like Glassdoor, which people really like, but that are people just giving up their salaries, and so they don't know the consistency of it, and they don't have the depth and breadth of particular industries, but it's still good. I mean, I think all research is good, but we would just recommend those two in particular.
Yes, Harriet, and then we'll go.
I'd like to make a point that student loans are really very difficult, and they should not be asked for. I taught at UDC, and one of my students wanted to take a student loan so she can get alligator boots to wear. And she and I try to say, good, you're gonna borrow a student loan, you won't be able to pay it back, and the first car you buy when you get a job will be taken away off your street. Why are you taking a student loan if it isn't for your tuition? And that's the only reason student loans should be taken, and I think we should be telling them when we teach young people, do not use this opportunity to get handy money for alligator boots.
Great point about financial literacy.
Yeah,
Reinforcing
right.
the importance of
What is
financial
gonna happen
literacy.
down the
You had
line?
a question?
Yes, actually I have kind of a two-part question, and maybe for both of you. So both of you talked in your presentations about the pay gap for women when they step off to have children. And you talked about the loss of income. So I'm curious to know, is there any data that talks about how long it takes women to regain the lost pay during the time that they're kind of out of the work world and when they decide they want to step back? And then the second question was a question related to any data around how women, as compared to men, how long it takes them to reach kind of that optimal level when it comes to maybe C-suite type roles, any data around
What type roles, I'm sorry?
like C-level roles, so CEO, CFO.
I
Yeah.
see what you're saying.
So kind of a two-part.
Okay, who wants to?
I would say for the first question, it's hard to gauge because it really depends on industry and how long that woman is out of the workforce, and so it's hard to know like how much money is actually being lost, and so a lot of it's just on averages, and so that would be difficult. But
if you do it if you say if you're an attorney, for example, you can go out and come back in probably relatively easily. If you go in and out of a smaller firm, if you're going into a big firm, you're going to start back at the bottom again. But I know Edith Fierst. Anybody here still remember Edith?
Absolutely, yes.
And as you know, when you get percentage increase over the years, the gap became wider and wider for her. She came to me in tears. She said, I have done this to myself.
to others.
And
Exactly.
and others. That was her assumption. She didn't need the money as much, and she wanted to support families. Luckily, the university had a very smart computer program that had an algorithm that could enter in the gap. They couldn't give her as much because it was astounding. But they suggested she wait a couple of years, and they bumped up her salary so she could retire with a higher average. But isn't that a sad story?
It's probably repeated.
Tenure too, they get tenure from women. I'm sure you know too. At GW, we were waiting for the chairman to die, so we would all slot up one. I left. I said, and to get tenure, you need to publish a lot. If you like teaching, which I obviously do, that's not what puts you on the tenure track.
Okay, we have a commitment for our ending time. This has been such an interesting discussion. Clearly, I think the questions and discussion could go on.